You know what? Let me preface this right now. Before I give my talk, as many of you know, I've been involved in a transgenerational theater project, which is a theater company, all trans people and gender nonconforming people. And one of those people in that project is here tonight, Christian Appel. Christian recently was in an off-Broadway production called Not a Ghost, which Christian portrayed Chelsea Manning. So, hi. Hi, Christian. We should all welcome. I kind of have to do this, but I really don't want to talk about myself very much. But if you remember a while back, way back, Daniel Ellsberg actually was one of the first people to defend. At the time he used the word, he said, I was Bradley Manning, and Rene Imperato was Chelsea Manning. Why was Rene? I'll tell you why. You see, I was in Vietnam, and I was a courier for military intelligence, okay? And there's two things that are actually quite, not that I ever faced the challenges that Chelsea faces now. But I did face 77 years in prison for illegal distribution of a newspaper called The Bond, which was an anti-war veterans organization with 10,000 members. So I was detained, and there was also another newspaper that was distributed at the base called Workers' World, and basically I beat the rap. There's two similarities, though. One is, see, what Chelsea Manning had to do, as many people say to me, how could you risk your entire life in jail? How could you go on living facing that? Well, the answer is Chelsea couldn't go on living not doing that. So in many ways, there was the transition to Chelsea Manning and the transition out of the belly of the beast, of the military monster of capitalist imperialist war. Michael touched on the recent July 5th attempted suicide by Chelsea. I've been in some of those jails. The cells are very small. The first cell that Chelsea was put in when she was returned to the United States, she was detained at Quantico in Virginia. And her cell was 6 feet by 8 feet. Now, I can think of a couple of people in this room. I mean, could you just imagine like Gregory Dunkel in a cell like that? I mean, really. And I might say that the barometer for all these cells, they're not all the same. It was deliberate and torturous, or as Chelsea calls it, no-touch torture. Recently, a prisoner in it's a prison in California, Penguin. Pelican. A prisoner was sentenced to indefinite, ongoing, year after year, complete, total isolation from sounds, from human beings, from anything. And the judge actually admitted, yes, this will drive you out of your mind. I mean, this judge is obviously a criminal. And this is the same intention with Chelsea. If you could just imagine, it's not that she wasn't afraid of power of the government, but she came to realize, the power of what you're facing as an individual, alone, facing this monster. They can say what they want. They can tell you what they want. They can give you no information. After her first arrest, I might add, she was put in a cage, which was smaller than 6 by 8 feet, in a tent in Kuwait. And at that time, and even in Quantico, no access, no phone, no mail, no TV, no radio, no newspapers, obviously no internet access. I'm sure they were afraid of that. Chelsea was put in this cell, and I just want to say, can you imagine, for 17 hours out of the day, you can't lean against the wall, you can't lay down, you can't exercise. So what Chelsea did was the one thing that they said, that they didn't say she could not do. So she danced and danced. I'm sorry. And danced. And I wanted to mention, I'm a little over time, I'm sorry. I wanted to mention that the UN actually has a division in it called just bear with me a minute. I kind of hit the screen in the wrong spot. I got a little emotional. But there is a special actual rapporteur on torture. His name is Juan Mendez. And Mendez said that Chelsea's treatment was cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment, describing the excessive and prolonged isolation that Chelsea was placed under for that time as raising concerns because the risk of grave irreparable harm to the detained person increases with the length of isolation and the uncertainty regarding its duration. In my public declarations on this theme, I have defined prolonged solitary confinement as any period in excess of 15 days. Which makes you think about Mumia Abu-Jamal and Leonard Peltier, by the way. This definition reflects the fact that most of the scientific literature shows that after 15 days, certain changes in brain function and the harmful psychological effects of isolation can become irreversible. This is deliberate on their part. These monsters, what they're doing to her, what they tell her to do with her hair, what they tell her that she cannot transition. I'm talking about the surgical transition. There are other parts of transition that are not necessarily defined by surgery, I might add. Although that practice, while some people call it transitioning, some of us would call it corrective surgery. So, but I just wanted to say one other thing, if I may, and that was just a brief comment that Bradley made after the Orlando massacre. What did I say? Oh my God, excuse me. It actually says it right here on this spot. As a young queer kid growing up, I explored my identity through the Chicago and Washington, D.C. club scene. As many have said, the club is our sanctuary, a place where we find ourselves, love ourselves, and find community. I can totally relate to the trauma that has afflicted our community in the wake of the shooting in Orlando. I'd just like to end with this. She says, we must grieve and mourn and support each other, but in our grief and outrage, we must resist any temptations to let this attack or any attack trigger anti-Muslim foreign policy, attacks on our civil liberties, or as an excuse to descend into xenophobia and Islamophobia. Thank you.